It was supposed to be the happiest time for everyone. The living room was glowing with fairy lights as my sister, Lisa, beamed with pride, showing off her sparkling engagement ring to the family. The air smelled of Mom's famous casserole, and laughter filled every corner of the house. For a moment, it felt like everything was perfect. But perfection, as I've learned, is fragile. Whether you're here to unwind, get inspired, or simply enjoy a good story, we're so glad you're spending your time with us today. We'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop a comment below and let us know. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Now, sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's tale. Hi, I'm Mia, the quiet one in a family where everyone loves the spotlight. I've always been the steady hand, the problem solver who fades into the background while others bask in attention. And honestly, I didn't mind. Lisa, my older sister, was the golden child, charismatic, beautiful, and the one everyone gravitated towards. I loved her fiercely despite the unspoken comparisons. That evening, surrounded by family, I couldn't help but feel a bittersweet ache. Lisa's engagement marked a new chapter for her, but it also meant that she'd be leaving soon. I told myself it was selfish to feel this way, but Lisa was more than just my sister. She was my best friend. At least that's what I thought. The chaos began the morning after the celebration. I was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through my phone with a cup of coffee in hand, when Lisa stormed in, her face pale and frantic. "My ring! It's gone!" she cried, her voice trembling. First, I thought she was joking, but as I looked closer, I saw the tears pooling in her eyes. Mom and Dad rushed in, their concern quickly turning into panic. "Where did you last see it?" Dad asked, trying to calm her down. Lisa ran her fingers through her hair, her voice shaky. "I left it on my nightstand last night. It was there before I went to bed." I swear, what started as a frantic search quickly spiraled into chaos. Drawers were emptied, cushions were overturned, and the house felt like a whirlwind of panic and accusations. I tried to help, but every step I took seemed to make things worse. And then it happened. "Mia," Lisa said, her voice sharp and accusing, "you were in my room yesterday. You were the only one who could have taken it." For a moment, I was stunned into silence. My heart raced as every pair of eyes in the room turned toward me. "What? Lisa, are you serious? Why would I take your ring?" I stammered, my voice breaking. Her face hardened, and I saw something in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. Distrust. "You were always jealous of me, weren't you?" she said, her words cutting through me like a knife. The room fell into an uneasy silence. My parents exchanged glances, their uncertainty written all over their faces. I wanted to scream, to demand why my family, the people who knew me best, could even consider believing such a thing. The hurt in my chest was unbearable. How could Lisa, my sister, accuse me of something so cruel? The theme of that day became heartbreak, betrayal, and the beginning of an emotional storm I never saw coming. Little did I know, this accusation would unravel everything I thought I knew about family, trust, and myself. From the outside, my life appeared simple, almost too perfect in its simplicity. But anyone who took the time to look closer would have noticed the quiet tension beneath the surface. I wasn't the loud, attention-grabbing one like Lisa. That title had always belonged to her, effortlessly. She was the star of every room, the kind of person who could charm anyone with just a smile. My parents were proud of her, and they should have been. Lisa was everything they had dreamed of. Successful, poised, and never afraid to take charge. And then there was me, Mia, the quiet observer, the one who was always content to stay in the shadows, offering support without asking for anything in return. I didn't mind being the background character, as long as I knew I was needed. But somewhere along the way, that need had started to feel like a trap. I was the responsible one, the one who kept everything together when things got tough. While Lisa was always out with friends, attending parties, and chasing the next big thing, I stayed home. I did the chores, helped our parents with their businesses, and made sure everything ran smoothly. And I was okay with that. But there was a part of me that longed for more. a desire to be seen, to be heard, to be more than just the helper, the second fiddle. I wanted my own spotlight, my own achievements, but those things always seemed just out of reach, like a distant star that I could never quite touch. I convinced myself that my role was to support others. I believed that the more I sacrificed, the more I would be loved. Lisa and I had always been close, even if she didn't know it. Growing up, I was the one who listened to her every rant, offered advice when she needed it, and supported her during every life milestone. She confided in me and I in her. I believed we shared a bond that no one could break. We were sisters, after all, and that meant something, didn't it? But as the years went on, something began to shift. I started noticing the subtle changes, small remarks about my appearance, hints that my quiet demeanor wasn't as appealing as Lisa's outgoing personality. Our relationship started to feel less like a partnership and more like a competition. Lisa's charm seemed to overshadow everything I did. She was the golden child and I was, well, just Mia. I didn't mind at first, or at least I told myself that I didn't. But deep down, a quiet resentment started to build. It wasn't a jealousy of her success, but of the way she could navigate the world so effortlessly. It was the way everyone, our parents, our extended family, even our friends, always saw her as the star of the show. It wasn't that I wanted her to fail. I just wanted to be noticed for once. The announcement hit me like a ton of bricks. My sister, the girl who could do no wrong, was getting married. It should have been a moment of joy for me, but all I felt was emptiness. Lisa had always been the center of attention, and now she would be stepping into the next chapter of her life, leaving me behind. I tried to push down my feelings of resentment, telling myself that I was happy for her. But inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been left in her shadow. My parents, of course, were thrilled. The engagement party was everything I had imagined it would be: beautiful, extravagant, and filled with admiration for Lisa and her fiancé, James. But for me, it felt like a reminder of everything I was never going to have. And that's when it happened. The night before the engagement party, after everyone had left and the house was quiet, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the glittering engagement ring that had captured everyone's attention. The ring symbolized everything that Lisa was, everything she had, everything I would never have. I didn't want to feel that way. I knew I shouldn't feel that way, but there it was, an undeniable truth I couldn't ignore. The next day, when Lisa came to me in a frenzy, accusing me of stealing her ring, my world shattered. The anger and confusion I felt were overwhelming. How could she, my sister, the one person who was supposed to understand me, accuse me of something so terrible? But as the days went by, it became clear that no one believed me. My parents were torn. They wanted to trust Lisa, the daughter they had always been so proud of, and they couldn't fathom that I could be capable of such a betrayal. They didn't know me, not really, not anymore. And Lisa wasn't just accusing me of theft. She was accusing me of something far deeper, a betrayal of our bond, a fracture in the very foundation of our relationship. I couldn't even begin to explain what that did to me. The days following Lisa's accusation felt like an eternity, each moment stretching into the next with a suffocating weight. I tried to carry on as if everything were normal, but nothing felt normal. Everywhere I went, there was a shadow hanging over me, a constant reminder of the betrayal that wasn't even mine to claim. The first obstacle I faced was the disbelief in my own home. My parents, who had always been my rock, looked at me as though I had somehow transformed into a stranger. They didn't say it out loud, but their silence spoke volumes. I could feel their eyes on me, the way they would glance at each other in hushed conversation when they thought I wasn't paying attention. They couldn't bring themselves to believe that I was capable of something so low, and part of me understood. Lisa had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one who could not harm. But why didn't they see the cracks in her story? Why didn't they question the timing, the suddenness of the accusation? It was as though I was invisible. My voice was drowned out in the storm of Lisa's words. She painted me as a jealous sister, someone who couldn't stand to see her happiness, who would go to any lengths to ruin it. The more I tried to explain, to tell them that I would never, in a million years, take her engagement ring, the more their disbelief turned into suspicion. It was the worst feeling in the world, not just being accused but being silenced. In the midst of all this, I found myself retreating further into myself. I withdrew from my friends, from the world outside. I couldn't bring myself to face anyone. How could I? How could I look anyone in the eye knowing that they might believe the lie? There were times when I would sit in my room, staring at the walls, wondering if I was just a pawn in some twisted game I didn't understand. Then there was Lisa. She became a presence in the house that I could no longer avoid. She would walk past me with coldness in her eyes, like I was the one who had wronged her. I could see the satisfaction in her expression, the way she relished the fact that I was cornered, that everyone was on her side. Every conversation we had, every interaction, felt like a battlefield. I was the accused and she was the judge. Her words were sharp, her accusations venomous, and I had no defense. No matter how hard I tried to explain, she wouldn't listen. And yet, even as my world was crumbling, I couldn't help but love her. She was my sister, after all. The bond we shared was so deeply ingrained in me that I couldn't simply erase it, no matter how hurtful her actions were. I kept telling myself that this wasn't her fault, that something had to have happened to make her think this way. I wanted to believe that, even as the pain in my chest grew. But every time I saw her smug smile or heard her cold words, that belief began to waver. The tension in the house escalated over the next few days. My parents seemed torn between us, unsure of where to place their loyalty. But I saw it. Their quiet trust in Lisa, the way they hesitated before looking at me. It was clear that they didn't want to believe I was capable of what she accused me of, but they didn't know how to defend me either. The seed of doubt had been planted, and now it was growing like a weed, taking root in their minds. Then came the call. It was from one of our cousins, a distant relative who had heard about the drama from Lisa. She had no idea what had happened, but she wanted to offer support. I remember the exact words she used. "Mia, honey, I know your family is going through a tough time, but don't let this tear you apart. Lisa is upset, but you have to stay strong." Her words were meant to be comforting, but they felt like salt in an open wound. How could I stay strong when everything around me was falling apart? How could I hold my head high when my own family was questioning my integrity? I spent the next few days drowning in self-doubt. Was I really the person Lisa thought I was? Could I have done something to make her feel this way? Maybe she was right. Maybe, deep down, I was capable of betrayal. I asked myself these questions over and over, only to find no answers. As the days wore on, the emotional toll became unbearable. I started withdrawing further into myself, sinking into a darkness that felt like it would swallow me whole. I spent hours reflecting on my life, on my relationship with Lisa, on the choices I had made. I wondered if I had missed something, some small action, some word that had made her see me as a threat. Had I unknowingly triggered her jealousy? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how deeply hurt I was. I had been there for Lisa always. I had loved her unconditionally, without hesitation. I had supported her, cheered for her, and celebrated her successes. And yet, in one moment, all of that had been cast aside. She had accused me of something unforgivable, and my family had believed her. And that was when something inside me changed. I could no longer remain passive. I couldn't keep letting my emotions control me. I had to fight back, to prove my innocence. Not just to Lisa, but to myself. I had to confront the truth, even if it meant facing the people I loved most. I started taking action. I retraced every step I had taken the night before the engagement party, looking for any clue, any trace of evidence that could clear my name. I began to question Lisa's motives. Why had she accused me? What was she hiding? What was really going on behind the scenes? It wasn't going to be easy. In fact, I had no idea where to start. But I knew one thing. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. The truth had to come out. It all came to a head one Sunday afternoon, just over a week since the accusation had shattered our family's peace. The air in the house felt thick, like the silence before a storm. I had spent the morning pacing the living room, my thoughts spinning in endless loops, trying to gather the courage to face Lisa. The weight of my guilt and frustration had been gnawing at me for days, but I had finally come to a decision. I couldn't let this go on any longer. I needed answers, and I needed them from her. When I approached her room, the house was eerily quiet. The soft hum of the house the only sound. My breath hitched in my throat as I raised my hand to knock. But before I could, the door swung open, and there she stood. Lisa was wearing the same cold expression she always had since the accusation. Her eyes, once full of warmth, now seemed empty, as if there was no room left for love or understanding. Her posture was tense, her arms crossed over her chest. She looked like a wall I could never break down. "What do you want?" Her voice was sharp, brittle, stung, but I didn't flinch. "I need to talk to you," I said, the words coming out hoarse as if they had been stuck in my throat for days. Lisa's eyes narrowed, but she stepped back, gesturing for me to come in. I took a deep breath and walked inside, closing the door softly behind me. The tension in the room was suffocating. The place felt claustrophobic, the walls closing in around us, as if we were about to reach a tipping point. "I don't know how much longer I can take this, Lisa," I said, the anger that had been bubbling under the surface for days finally breaking free. "I don't know how much longer I can be accused of something I didn't do." She stiffened, her lips pressing into a thin line. "I don't care what you think. You stole my ring, Mia, and if you're going to sit here and deny it, then I don't even know who you are anymore." Her words hit me like a slap, her accusation hanging heavy in the air between us. I shook my head, a coldness settling over me. "You're wrong. You're lying. I didn't steal your ring." I could feel the heat of frustration rising in my chest, and I couldn't hold back any longer. "Why won't you listen to me? Why won't you even try to believe me?" Lisa's expression hardened, and she stepped closer, her voice low and dangerous. "I don't need to listen to you. I've already made up my mind, and you can't change that. You've always been jealous of me, haven't you? Always trying to take what's mine and ruin everything I've worked for. You think I don't see it?" Her words cut deeper than I could have imagined. They weren't just accusations. They were an assault on everything I had ever believed about our relationship. The sisterhood we had shared, the bond that I had thought was unbreakable, was suddenly shattered, replaced by bitterness and resentment. Tears welled in my eyes, but I blinked them away. I couldn't afford to show weakness. Not now, not when the truth was within my grasp. "I've never been jealous of you, Lisa. I've always supported you. I've always been proud of you. But I can't do this anymore. I can't let you destroy me with lies. I didn't take your ring." For a moment, there was silence. Her eyes flickered, just for an instant, and I caught it, doubt. I saw it in the way her posture shifted, in the way her gaze darted toward the floor. I knew she was questioning herself, but she didn't want to admit it. And then, something unexpected happened. She broke. I didn't want to believe it either. "Mia," she whispered, her voice trembling. But I was so scared. I thought I had lost everything. The engagement, my happiness, everything I had worked for. I was panicked, and when I saw the ring was missing, I just knew it was you. It was as if a dam had burst, and all the pain and fear that Lisa had been hiding came pouring out. I could hear the tremor in her voice, the guilt she had been holding back. She was shaking now, her arms wrapped around herself, her face pale. "I never wanted to hurt you, but I was so scared. I thought losing the ring meant losing him. Losing everything." I stood there, frozen, as her confession sank in. I could see it now, the cracks in her perfect image, the vulnerability beneath the anger. She was terrified, but that fear had clouded her judgment, pushing her to hurt the one person who would never want to hurt her in return. I felt a mix of emotions flood over me. Anger, confusion, sadness, but also something else, something softer. Pity. Lisa's voice cracked as she continued, "I know I shouldn't have accused you. I know it was wrong, but I didn't know what else to do. I've been so afraid of losing everything I had, and when I couldn't find it, I just lost myself." I took a step toward her, my heart heavy with a strange mixture of relief and sorrow. "I understand, Lisa. I do. But you can't just accuse me like that. You can't destroy everything we had just because you were afraid. She nodded, tears now streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Mia. I didn't mean to do this. I didn't know how to fix it. I stood there, unsure of what to do next. I wanted to comfort her, to hold her, but I also needed to protect myself. The hurt she had caused me ran too deep for me to simply forget. This moment of clarity, of truth, had shifted something between us, but it hadn't healed the wounds. I think we need time, I said quietly, my voice steady but soft. I need time to understand what just happened, but I can't pretend like everything is okay right away. She nodded again, taking a shaky breath. I understand, and I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. In that moment, I felt the weight of everything that had happened crash down on me, but I also felt a glimmer of hope. It wasn't a complete resolution. There was still much to work through, but for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe again. The truth had come out, and I wasn't going to be the villain in her story anymore. It was me, and no matter how broken the pieces were, that was enough. The days following that confrontation were a blur of emotions. The house, which had felt so heavy with unspoken accusations, now seemed oddly quiet. Still, yet somehow more open. The tension, though not completely gone, had loosened its grip on me, allowing space for healing to begin. After the truth had come out, I wasn't sure what to expect. Part of me had expected Lisa to push me away even more, to retreat into her shell, unable to face the damage she'd caused. But to my surprise, she began to change. Slowly, tentatively, she reached out. It wasn't in grand gestures or sweeping apologies, but in small, quiet moments. An awkward phone call, a hesitant hug when I least expected it. The first time she reached for my hand after the confrontation, my heart clenched. I wasn't sure I could trust her again, not just yet, but I didn't pull away. The vulnerability in her eyes, the rawness of her apology, kept me from shutting her out completely. I could see she was trying to fix what she had broken. But even as we began the slow, painful process of rebuilding our relationship, there was an undeniable shift in me. I wasn't the same person I was before the accusation. Couldn't be. The experience had peeled away layers of naivety and trust, leaving me more guarded, more aware of the fragility of relationships. The anger that had surged within me began to dissipate, replaced by a quiet resolve. I wasn't going to let this define me. I had to let go of the resentment I was holding on to. It wasn't easy. At times, I still felt the sting of her words, her accusations, like old scars that refused to fade. But with each passing day, I realized that forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past. It was about freeing myself from its grip. And though I couldn't forget, I was learning to move forward. Our family, too, began to heal, but it wasn't without its struggles. My parents, who had been caught in the crossfire of Lisa's accusations, were still processing the events. They had been so quick to believe Lisa without question, and though they apologized, I could sense their guilt for not standing by me sooner. But even with the tension between us, there was a shift. We were all learning to be more honest with each other, to open up in ways we hadn't before. Lisa, for her part, seemed to be slowly discovering what had driven her to act the way she had. I could see her wrestling with her insecurities and fears, realizing how much she had let them control her. We hadn't yet found the perfect balance, but we were getting there, one painful conversation at a time. In the quiet moments, as I sat in the room that once felt like a battlefield, I reflected on how far I had come. I had started out as a victim, accused, hurt, betrayed, but I was ending up something different, stronger, more self-aware, more patient with myself. The emotional journey was far from over. There was still much to untangle, to process, but I could feel a shift, a sense of peace I hadn't known before. The falling action wasn't about resolving everything immediately. It was about accepting the complexity of the situation, the messiness of human relationships, and understanding that healing takes time. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could finally breathe again. Time has a strange way of healing wounds. Though it doesn't erase the scars, it softens their edges. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, I found myself slowly piecing together the fragments of my life that had been shattered by my sister's accusations. But the process wasn't as simple as putting things back together. No, it was more like creating something new from what was left behind. Shaped by the experience, yes, but more resilient, more authentic. The fallout from the confrontation was not an instant fix. There were still moments of tension, awkward silences at family gatherings, and unresolved feelings that lingered like the smell of smoke after a fire. But it wasn't about erasing the past, it was about learning to live with it, to coexist with the pain and the growth that came from it. I had learned that forgiveness wasn't just for others, it was for me too. It wasn't about forgetting what had happened, but about choosing to let go of the anger and resentment that had weighed me down for so long. Lisa and I still had a long road ahead, but the foundation was being rebuilt, brick by brick. There were times when I still caught myself looking at her with a hint of suspicion, unsure if I could fully trust her again. But there were also moments when I saw the glimmer of the sister I once knew, the one who had shared secrets, dreams, and laughter with me. I realized that people aren't just their worst mistakes, and I didn't want to be defined by mine either. Our family, too, was evolving. There was a renewed sense of understanding between my parents and me. It wasn't about pretending that things had been perfect or that everything was okay right away, but we had learned to be more open, more compassionate, and more honest with each other. The incident forced us all to confront our flaws, and while that was uncomfortable, it was necessary for growth. We were stronger now, not because of what we had gone through, but because we had chosen to face it together. As for me, I had changed in ways I hadn't expected. I had learned to trust myself more, to stand firm in my truth, even when it wasn't the easiest thing to do. I learned that people's actions are often driven by their pain and insecurities, and that it's okay to offer empathy even when you've been hurt. But most of all, I had learned that I was capable of more resilience than I had ever given myself credit for. In the end, I realized that we're all flawed, broken, and human. Each of us carrying our own burdens, our own regrets, our own mistakes. But it is through those very flaws that we grow, that we learn what really matters, and that we discover the strength we didn't know we had. Life isn't about avoiding pain or hardship, but about finding the courage to keep moving forward, even when it seems impossible. As I looked back at the tumultuous journey that had led me to this point, I realized that while the past couldn't be changed, it had shaped me into the person I was becoming. A person who had learned to forgive, to heal, and to embrace the messy, beautiful complexity of life. And for that, I was grateful. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful. And that, in itself, was a victory. If you found value in this story, I'd love for you to share your thoughts in the comments. Let's create a community where we support each other and learn from the highs and lows that life has to offer. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing, liking, and sharing this video with someone who might need to hear this message today. Thank you for being part of this journey with me.